Hello, and welcome to the Project Good podcast. I'm your host, Annemarie Hilton. Project Good is a social impact podcast interviewing experts and advocates about the pressing problems that we face globally and hearing how they suggest we move forward in the future. The Project Good podcast is brought to you by Project Good Work. The goal of this podcast is to inspire people and organizations to develop a mindset that can move others to positive action regarding the complex social issues facing people and the planet. For August, we have a special flash episode featuring Joe Edgar about looking at life differently. Joe is the founder and CEO of Loca, which helps small businesses find, manage, and reward customers. Prior to Loca, Joe founded Tenant Cloud and was the CEO of Rentler. Prior to Tenant Cloud, he was a principal with Petros Partners, and prior to that, the managing director of J4 Venture Fund, a $50 million venture fund focused on Texas early-stage companies and startups. He was also a member of the U.S. Treasury SSBCI Venture Capital Steering Committee. Prior to the J4 Venture Fund, he was with Governor Rick Perry and managed $487 million in state authority with a focus on Texas early-stage and emerging companies. He was also an advisor to the Texas Rural Health and Economic Development Advisory Committee. He's a founding member of the Texas Pace Authority, a nonprofit which aims to bring clean energy to Texas commercial property owners. Joe is also has an extensive background in real estate, investing, and developing, which started when he was 14 years old, and now includes investments in Texas, Oregon, Arizona, and Utah. Joe is a writer for Forbes and a graduate of the University of Oregon with high honors, holds a MBA from Cornell, and is a Kauffman Fellow. Let's get into the interview. One thing that almost everyone can agree on is that life is unpredictable. Where and how you start is not the way you finish. From what many of us have been seen in life is that sometimes it's like a roller coaster with no safety belts. It's in those moments you have your true character shown, grit, and your personhood is tested. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing well-known entrepreneur Joe Edgar about his life journey and what has kept him grounded and moving forward in his life. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited about this interview, and I thought you would be the perfect person because you have had, I would say, a remarkable life in that you've had a lot of different experiences that I would say maybe if from an outsider's perspective would not be expected, I guess. And so one of the things I want to ask you before we dive deep into the interview is what is the most important thing you knew about yourself when you were a kid, and what is it now?
Oh, it's a good question. I think when I was a kid, I knew I was poor. So now I think I just regroup and always think back to that to kind of, I guess, ground myself and put myself in those cases. In fact, I'm in Oregon right now. I do a hike every year. My son has been willing to join me the last 5 years, and we hike the Pacific Crest Trail. And one of those sections, you can walk past it and see like the area I grew up in the Reservation area in Chiloquin. And so, it's been nice to be able to look at that and just remember, how things were once upon a time, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you know about yourself now that you think is the most important?
Well, when you were even walking through that intro, it made me laugh a little bit because part of it when you're growing up, you don't know how it will turn out. And I've been called an entrepreneur many times, and I do put that, as a serial entrepreneur, but I don't really think of myself as an entrepreneur. When you're, I'm one of 13 kids, and in a small town, I think our population was like 750. There's a sign, actually, if you cross it, that's been up there for 40 years, and it says some number, like 750 or something. And when you grow up in a place like that, it's not really entrepreneurship is on your mind. Like, I want to start a business. It's how do I survive? So, hustling is really the name of the game. It's just doing whatever it takes to, figure things out. And so that's probably more of today is that, if I knew how it would turn out, I'd probably end up being a little more lazy and, and less into it. But the fact that you were trying to, hustle and just figure things out, I think put that perspective on it today that, makes me more appreciative of what I had. I thought I had nothing, but when I look back, I was really blessed. I had a huge advantage. The advantage was I didn't have anything, but hard work ethic. My father was a contractor. My mother was a janitor. Our family was the labor force. So, we had to go and participate and, building houses, cleaning construction sites, and then on the weekends helping vacuum and clean toilets at the church. And so, all of those things kind of, combined, instilled in me a strong work ethic and, seeing the community around everybody that, tries to support each other and inside of a capitalistic system. And by that, I mean, they were starting businesses or they're doing lawn care. So, it's really that old trade barter system. And you find out that's really the backbone and the heart of the economy. So I still have that in me today. I see things in that kind of perspective where I definitely have zero desires to have a yacht, but I do have desires to, accumulate a lot of capital so I can put it to, to work to help, other people trying to grow their dreams. So,
Yes, and I've noticed that, and there was a theme as I was researching for this interview. One of, I guess, I would say, if I had to put a word on a theme about even the businesses that you have created and what you have just explained about, your childhood and how that shaped you into adulthood, is that I guess I would say the word I would use with you is community. I guess that's what I would say because, and the reason that I'm picking that word is, for obvious reasons, real estate and home building is, I would say, what the foundation of community, right?
right, right, yeah.
Right. We we're
Liter-
looking
Literally the
literally.
foundation.
Yes. We're all looking for we're all looking for a place to live and need to have somewhere to, have a dwelling, right? So that's the start of any community. Is that we have to have a place to put the actual people.
Right.
And so, so I know that you started young, and I guess, that was influenced, I guess, by your parents a little bit, in that you got into real estate. Would you say that is, I guess, was the driving factor of why you chose real estate, or it was just something that you were interested in even at a young age?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say I was so brilliant. I picked real estate, but you are right that it kind of picked me. It was conveniently there, and I do love that you talk about community. I've never thought of that, but having grown up in a very large family, if you ever were to sit and have a meal with me, I have to consciously tell myself, "Eat slow, eat slow, eat slow," because I eat really fast, like, obnoxiously fast, and that's just, I think, one of those things growing up in a large family that, happens, you just eat fast, and so being part of a community, there were 13 of us, but there were way more than that at the dinner table because our house was just an open door policy to the entire, town or wherever it was, so being part of the community for sure. My my father was a contractor, so he learned to build houses as a trade. He built the house we were originally when I was born, I was the first one born on the reservation, and so he built that house. It was a small three-bedroom, and, we they started having so many kids in their master, bedroom, they didn't finish the bathroom because they could only do so much. They, built as much as they could, but, saved on expenses, so it was just an open area, and they had some plumbing sticking out, and they had turned it into, some more beds, so that was like another bedroom. Any closet was a bedroom, basically, and he, built that house, but as the family grew, then not far from there and to set the scene, I mean, I live in Austin now, I'm up here in Oregon, but we don't have mountains. We have these small hills, but we don't have mountains. And so I grew up at the base of this gorgeous Oregon's largest lake, the Klamath. It's actually the agency. It's a branch of the Klamath Lake, and it's at the base of this entire mountain range, White Peak Mountains, and it's just gorgeous. And we're at the top of the hill. Then the small house, but we had built a new house at the bottom, and so I was in, I believe, the second grade. How old are you in the second grade? Maybe 8? So
Yeah, eight, 7, 8. Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe 8. And we had to help carry bricks. I mean, literally, we were the labor force in building that. And to finance it, we had to sell. So we did as much on the lower property. They were able to buy it. And they dug out a foundation. They put in all the bricking. And then they laid the first floor. And then they covered it with black plastic. And that was the roof for the winter, and we were gonna move in there so they could sell the other house to pay to build the rest of this house. So, um, that's what we did. We lived there. We had, it was covered in snow. The basement was just one huge area, so divide it into bedrooms. We took, old wheat canisters, so they'd buy wheat and honey by the bulk because we're a large family, so they take these canisters, and then we had rebar hanging from the ceiling, and there would be clothes hanging on it, and that was basically room division for this small space, which was probably maybe 900 square feet. I mean, when I was young, I was like, "Oh, it's so big." It was huge. But going back to it, it's not that big. And then we had this little board as a door that you would, walk up, and we'd have a little wood burning stove down there, and the outhouse would be outside. And so that was our first winter being down there. But then we ended up building this house, and it was a gorgeous house. And later on, when we could afford it, I was, in my later teens, we were able to build this big wraparound porch and really finish that house out. And it's a gorgeous house that they went on to sell, but they had to kind of pay for it. But we as children took part in all of the building, and so we were the labor force. It was just, it was trained in me. It was something that I wish and I've wanted to give to my own kids to teach them, like, if nothing else, you know how to build a house, you know how to fix something, but I've been terrible. It's sad because I look back and my parents did such a great job just making us work, and I've done such a terrible job being a parent. Fortunately, my own kids are not as skilled as I was, and so by 14, I had already helped build numerous homes and everything from excuse me, everything from plumbing to electrical to the framing, the concrete work. And so you just had to be a jack of all trades. So for me to buy a house, and my father was kind of getting into this, he was trying to figure out how can they get ahead. So they had already bought one, and the whole family, we helped fix it up and get it ready. So by the time I was 14, to be honest, I was quite trained in the art of, being able to, take on a project of buying a house and fixing it up. And on the reservation, just to put things in perspective, because everyone's like, at 14, where'd you get the money? And my very first house cost $10,000.
Wow.
That
Okay.
helps a lot of perspective. Oddly enough, I recently just went back to look at what does that house sell for now, and it's still about 50,000. So there is some inflation, but the average house in this country sells for 450,000. So when you hear I bought the first one, now it was trashed. We had to do an entire remodel job, but I put $3,000 down that I'd saved up mowing lawns, and I'd convinced the local hardware store, really because my parents. I said, "Hey, well, can I borrow a loan?" And I definitely borrowed more than I think they thought they were going to lend me. So I think they were like, "Sure, we can give you a little bit," but I extended that. I spent a little over $10,000 just fixing it up, and it took me about 60 days, and I just cranked it every day, every night, every second I could, and definitely got some, help doing that, and then sold it for about 45,000, after those 60 days. So that kind of was the start.
Wow.
So
That's
yes, I wish I
that's
could say I took
amazing.
credit, but you can see that it wasn't really me. It was really, I do say you have to take advantage of an opportunity, but being able to take advantage, that preparation wasn't really me.
Well, that's still amazing because, well, you know, as they always say, I guess they don't make things like they used to make them as, and what I mean by that is kids are so different now, right? If you had, you know, and I'm just talking in generalities, there are still, you know, kids that would do that. But nowadays they'd be like, are you serious? Like, you know,
Yes,
they're like, it's not digital or technical or
it is
like, you know,
true.
get dirty. Like,
Yes.
so you know, which is, you know, I guess I feel a little bit of your pain, and I feel that it, well, this is a little bit of an aside, but I almost feel that that's what's wrong with our times and our world today, is that, you know, people don't have that inner drive in you know, what should I say, a I don't want to say foundational. It's not really foundational. It's about, I guess maybe it's a drive to survive. I guess I
Yeah.
should say, right? They don't. That's
The
like been
hustle.
taken. Yeah, there's
Mhm.
that's like taken from people, and it doesn't even matter. You know, I've realized it even doesn't even matter what country anymore. When I talk to people all over the world, because of, you know, I guess I would a little bit blame technology, and also, you know, I guess the quickness of communication now, has, I think, changed the way that, you know, youth, I guess, participate within their own lives. So that's what I've noticed, anyways. I'm sure you've noticed similar things.
It's hard to narrow it down. I mean, I agree. I have some my own ideas, but I don't know what it is. I mean, some of it families are smaller, definitely. You know, my grandmother, she's one of 11 and she's still alive, 98. Her sister just turned 100, so they live together. Fun pair of sisters. And then my mother comes from, you know, so my grandmother had 11 children and 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 then she went on to have even more. So my grandmother has over 170 in living direct posterity. It's crazy, man. That's huge.
Wow.
But if you compare that to now, I mean, if you were to see any of your friends have a family of 4, you're just like, "Oh my goodness, how do you do that? 4?" You know, and we're not that far away from big families, and they're already small. So most families, you know, you would see 1 or 2, and when you have 1 or 2, I think resources change because we as people have changed where, um, you know, a lot of young people, we already have delayed household formation. And, you know, that means more and more men and women are waiting to move out of their homes. They're living with their parents well into their 30s. And so they're waiting, you know, to start their family, to start living independently, which means they're also waiting to have children. And there could be pros and cons to that. I just talked to a lady yesterday having a conversation like, wow, I got married when I was 17 and I was just pregnant constantly the next 20 years of my life and all the things she wanted to do in life. She's like, you know, basically that's all gone. I love all my grandkids. She doesn't regret any of it, but she's like, you know, the world is so different for her and she wasn't able to really have a job at certain times. And so you now see where, you know, there's an equal opportunity of sorts for anyone, male, female, race in this country to really try to go out and, you know, establish something which now puts sort of a centric focus on themselves versus a family necessarily. And what that does is if you now wait until you're think in your mind, it used to be, I need a family because that's going to help me survive. Like I was the labor force, and in many farming communities, you had a big family because they're going to go work the farm. But now people save up and they wait to have children until they can, you know, provide for them. And so when children are now provided for, I think there is less of an urgency, a less of a demand to hustle. And so I think it, you know, it's more of like, oh, I didn't have all this technology. Here's technology. And then, you know, we do have the ability as a country and a world to, you know, thrive. I mean, there's so many things you think of, you know, not too many generations ago, and you think they're wealthiest and you know, running water, air conditioning are pretty standard in everyone's house. I mean, no matter where you go, there's a TV and a phone and internet. So there are some things that really make it broad. But at the same time, with all that, I still love entrepreneurs. There's so many entrepreneurs out there inventing and creating things, and we look at them just playing on their phone, but a lot of them are now inventing things that we never, in fact, sometimes I don't even understand it, but they create immense amounts of wealth and for different generations who want to do that very thing, use their phones. So.
Yes, and so you as took your real estate from, I guess I would say, knowing the pun intended and not intended, the groundwork and the foundation of what it is to create and build a home, and the importance of community, and then later expanded it into not only I guess you would say typical real estate, but then made a turn into technology yourself. I guess what was, I don't know if you remember the moment or day or time, what made you, make a turn towards technology?
Oh man, fun question. I I was on the reservation, and my local school was not amazing. We had public education, and many stories since then. If you go there and you teach for 5 years, they'll help pay off your student debt, and they almost have no one who makes it that long. And so it's a bit of a wild place, lots of fights, and a small area, but pretty wild. And I ended up dropping out of high school to really do a lot of that real estate, but I still loved education. And so about 30 miles away, the closest town was Klamath Falls. And to me, that was a big city, which now if you drive through it, I think maybe 15 or 20,000 people. So this is a small farming community. But to me, it was a big city. It was gigantic. There were two-story buildings and stoplights. So it was just unbelievable, the big city. And they had a school there, Oregon Institute of Technology, and conveniently, its main focus was technology. And I started there when I was 15. I couldn't drive, so I was hitching a ride to try to make it to class there every day, and I joined a program. It was really designed for, more adults who are trying to return to school, but, it wasn't limited to, an age group, so that's how I was able to get in. And, I could only go part-time at the beginning, but I'd have to sit there because I could hitch a ride in the morning, and then I couldn't get a ride back. So for a good year or so until I could get my first car, there was lots of flexibility I'd have to go to class. But I was when was that? Mid-90s, the mid-90s. So I had my first email account then. And that was phenomenal to have email and figure this out. And modems at that time were 14K, 36K modem, and they were still going, it
I
was the
remember that.
exactly the dial up. So I think any of us from that generation know that noise. I do it to my kids. They're like, "What are you talking about?" So,
Yes.
but yeah, I basically was luckily and fortunate enough to go to a place where technology was up and coming. So, believe it or not, ended up studying C++ programming, which is still used today in some places, which is that's pretty fun because I don't do a lot of coding now. We have, to stay on top of it, we have teams. I would be the least efficient, but yeah, that was my kind of my core basis in learning about technology, which went on to become, a huge tech world. But unbeknownst to me, I just was again happened to land upon it and was very excited to learn about all the different things that software could do for sure.
That's cool. You just one thing I'm noticing about you is that you and I could be just taking this and not knowing, of course, the background because everybody has their inner mind workings, but you seem to, I guess, not be you seem to be willing to not be fearful in taking on, I guess, challenges. Is that how you've always been, or do you not see them as challenges because of the fact that you grew up in a family of 13. And I know just from, I didn't grow up from a large family, but I have parents that did. And so they used to explain, like, as you were explaining about just, sitting down at the table, like, if you wait too long, all the chicken is gone. So it's so too bad if brother Tommy didn't make it because he was stuck outside playing on the swing.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yes. Yes.
No,
So,
I mean, I think you said it. The chicken's gone, right? It's that miss out opportunity. And so if you don't take advantage of what you see now, then yeah, you're probably going to go hungry. So I use that all the time when I say I eat really fast, and that stays with me on almost everything. It's like, there's things happening all around. I don't want to miss out. Yeah, I want to learn about this. I want to learn about that. So yeah, that probably is just ingrained in me just because, if you didn't do it, if you were going to be the one who was slow. In fact, last year I went to a wedding, and the guy I ran into, and he knew my older siblings. I didn't remember him, but he's like, I remember the Edgars. He's like, it was unbelievable. We went over there to sit down for dinner, and like, I just like, you know, they put the food on the table, and I was just scooting in my chair, looked up, it's all gone. Everything's gone. So I think my entire family, they're all, entrepreneurs and doing different things. So I think that's just something that you grow up and you just have a hunger for, finding any opportunity that you can come across and grabbing onto it. So
Yes, and so that's, yeah, that is, it's amazing because like the things that you don't think that are shaping you when you were younger, like, it seems like like nobody would think like, the dinner table then would equate to, pushing someone to opportunities. But the thing that I'm bringing this up because I want our audience to realize, because I think a lot of times people, um uh our theme is that we're looking at life differently, is that people, I think nowadays, as we see in the public, beat themselves up for how they were raised or who they were when they were young, or I guess kind of this well, I'll use the word, even though nobody likes to use it, the victimhood
yeah.
mentality, right?
Right.
And everybody that that's like
I'm offended. That's what my daughter would say this all the time about everything. I was like, what? Your generation literally says they're offended about everything. Not only are they offended, but they say it constantly.
Right, right. And so, and then you want to come back and say, well, I'm offended that you're offended.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Um, and so, in this modern time, a lot of people, because that's, what you see on the TV these days or the news, it is just like, oh, it's a theme, right?
Right.
that keeps going. But the thing is that these things are actually important lessons that are shaping us into the people that we need to be. And there's this I guess desire to avoid any shaping in the society. And so, and I guess it goes back to what we were saying, that I believe that is maybe this avoidance of like, as they say, like, iron sharpens iron, and getting, when you're gonna have if you went to a blacksmith or whatever, they're ironing the heck out of these things, right?
Right.
And that if you want to become a quote unquote useful tool, you're going to have to go through the fire, and you're going to have to get some kind of pains inflicted on you in order to be, useful. And, and so I just think that's important for you to highlight that, look at something that you would have never at that age, made a connection to now, how that helped shape you and make you successful in life. So,
Yeah, I mean,
mhm.
you really bring up two fun topics. One of them is, sure, I can say, oh, I mean, you think of a river rock, and the more it tumbles, the smoother it gets. And you ultimately want to be this nice smooth rock, you're gonna have to get tumbled a lot. So there's definitely hard things, and I I now like to say, "Oh, I grew up poor," and, I say these just because they are triggering to people, so people are like, like, "Oh, wow, you're kidding," 'cause most people, don't, so it is slightly, you know, different of sorts, but, um, I growing up in it, I didn't know I was poor. My parents were struggling out. There was a lot of focus to, like, do work. They took out a lot of loans, so I definitely knew that, we were trying to get ahead. That was just built into me as they did so many things. We even had a family food truck. I mean, the holiday we hated the most was Labor Day because that was known to be, we're gonna work way harder on Labor Day, but we worked on Christmas Eve. I mean, it was like not school was great because then you could, not work. 'Cause Saturdays, I mean, you just worked all the time. It was a family of working. And so there was lots of work, which, you could say is hard, and I could talk through all the things, but to be honest, you look back, I had an amazing childhood. I grew up in this place with fresh air. We had well water. We had to grow our own garden for food. So I had all this really good organic food that we used we had to go and do a trade for manure. Our family would go and help buck hay at a farm, and in exchange, we'd get a cow every season that we'd, be able to put in the freezer. So I ate I mean, to eat like that now, you're like, "This is so expensive," and this was my poor life? You're kidding me. I mean, I had an amazing place. It was just beautiful. You could run free. I mean, you had to work hard a lot, but there was just things all around. We had a mountain we'd go to. I got into snowboarding, and we have to go and hike into Crater Lake National Park because we couldn't afford to go to the ski resorts, but still, it was just an amazing, gorgeous place. I tell people, like, I had to go to Crater Lake. I mean, this is a gorgeous national treasure that we have. Now, I put that in perspective because the other part that you say is, really comparing. Comparing is always a tough thing because I'm trying to compare my life now to my life then, and yes, it is interesting, but over the last, 3 or so years, Tennicon, one of our teams was in Ukraine, and I've still to this day, the Loca team, part of the Loca team is in Ukraine, so I still travel there to today. And, when you go and see these resilient people in Ukraine, this is where I just laugh at me even trying to claim I had any type of a hard life at all. It's like not even comparable. I mean, these people are so resilient, so amazing, and here they are being bombarded by bombs every night, and it's just disruption every day. And you can imagine the strain that it would go on. I mean, um, I think the whole country is probably going to suffer from PTSD when this is said and done, but just the impact it is. And these people are so resilient. And give you an example, I mean, we're in, this is Lviv, and actually, I guess it was in Ivano-Frankivsk, but the same place, about a year and a half ago when they took out all the power. So they have these stores. They're still trying to run their stores and trying to figure it out. Everywhere in that town, you could hear this buzzing noise. And when they, air, because whenever there's a bombing, you'll have the city siren go off, and it'll be loud everywhere, this huge siren, and, everybody should go down and hide, and if there's a subway, in the subway or in the cellars or something like that. So you hear the bombing, but then almost at the same time, you'll hear this, like, humming, and so when the power would go out, this humming that was resonating throughout the city, they're all generators.
Hmm.
So the city figured out how to replace their power to keep the refrigerators going, to keep the lights on for business. I mean, they're just open for business. All these generators are everywhere, and they're all open for business. Electrical cords, literally like just normal Home Depot type electrical cords, are spanning the streets, and they're giving powers to their neighbor, and the whole place is just operating. They're selling fish, they're selling all their products, are still there. Just a resilient people, there to hustle. And so when you really compare, and this is a country where the average pay is $600,
Wow.
and to take those type of resources where you are crammed between a country that wants to invade you and literally wipe you off the planet, and between Europe, who likes you but doesn't want to bring you in because they want to keep a buffer between that same villain. And talk about a place where, you you are up against real problems. And the problems are so big that talking about your own personal family problem in Ukraine isn't even there. Like, there's just monstrous geopolitical problems. And so when you put it in that type of a perspective, I don't think I had much of a hard life. It was pretty easy. I was blessed to be in a country where, resources and opportunities abound that really, even though my parents were in debt. And when I had to do this, I couldn't just think of myself. I had to think of like, how do I help the rest of the family get out of debt? Because we're all kind of, if I call it the spider web, but it's kind of like, this person would loan them money and then they'd loan it to them. And then that's how we were all trying to get out of this hole. And it was more like crabs in a bucket. And so for somebody to finally get out was not easy to pull through a lot of that, quote unquote spider web and that debt. But you put it in comparison to the world and, we're very fortunate to, have those problems. So fun conversation.
Yes, and when you talk about, I guess, a spider web, because the thing is, here's one of the challenges, and I guess it's I forget the saying that it is. I'm always bad at these sayings. But it's, you get influenced by, who you're surrounded by and things like that. And that it is hard for people to uplift themselves out of, situations of poverty, because, poverty, when people think about poverty, they just think about, the pictures they see, like, not enough resources of food or shelter or clothing and things like that, right? That's,
Right.
the instant thing when people hear poverty. But poverty is so much deeper than, not having
Mental.
things, right? And so, yeah, there's this mental thing. So even like sometimes people say that they can say that we were uh, uh, broke, right? Not having stuff, but they weren't poor, because poor is there's this mental, I guess you would say, a loss of hope, right? Because I
Right.
believe that's what I always like when, if you want to examine poverty really is a loss of hope. And that only, I think, can come into play when people really can disengage themselves from things. And, as we are in this society, I think we're in well, I think we're facing that right now. Is that, what is, I think there's a few big questions out on the plate, but I think one of the big things that the U.S. is looking at is what is true wealth, right?
Mm.
And that's a question, because, as you know, and capitalism has been driven by money and things, but we now see the, I guess, other effects, because one of the things when you start to accumulate things, and I've seen this, not only from our society, but even from personal aspects and from watching other people, is that you sometimes forget about what the true wealth is. And what that means is that the reason why you wanted that money and things in the first place was to give you the things that you talk about that you enjoyed in childhood, but didn't know that you really had well.
Right.
Funny, isn't it?
Right. The circle of which then you give to your kids, because they had it, they no longer want it.
Correct, right. So it's funny that, that you didn't realize, and you don't wake up to that until sometimes, it's too late, or that you're like, oh my gosh, I was working for what I actually already had.
Right. That's like the guy who searched the world looking for his diamond, and then turns out the property he sold to go, raise the money to go and diamond searching. He was, had the largest diamond. Yeah.
Yes. And so, so when we talk about, I guess, poverty, how did you, I guess, and maybe, and I guess first I should go back and maybe understand, because it seems that you had you know, um, a strong family, in that, I'm sure there were some of your siblings, was argumentative, like I'm not getting up tomorrow morning just to go on and tick anything for you, right?
Uh,
I'm sure there were a few of those that were like, look here.
oh man. My mother would
But
literally come in with a bowl of ice water, like a big bowl of ice water, and throw it at you in the bed if you did sleep in. So, yeah. You might call that
yeah.
incentive, but
So you didn't really have a choice, but I'm sure there were some as they got older were just like, I'm gonna have a discussion with these parents,
right.
um but in that setting, I guess, how did you pull yourself out of maybe that mentality, or was that mentality not really in the family because you didn't even have time, I guess, to think if they were just like, whoop, you slept
Uh,
2 hours too long, whoosh, you know?
uh.
How did you get yourself out of that mindset, I guess?
I mean, you're bringing up some really good conversations that could have long conversations in themselves because, you know, I I don't remember having a mindset of like, what can I accomplish? I mean, I think when you have, what are incentives? Some incentives can be in front of you, like you're trying to grab something. You just have a desire to go it. And so that's the motivation. I want this. I want this. I want this. And then some motivations are behind you. You have a fear of what this is going to, become. So you just keep moving forward because, you're like, well, I don't want that. So you got to keep moving forward. And I think when I was younger, it was definitely behind me. It was just like, we have to do this. It's a hustle. Like this is just the thing. And I wasn't trying to become or do something specific that I recall. I did want out of, the predicament that our family was, which was, this entrapment of debt. And, we could not seem to, get ahead. And so, um, you know, I was driving, you know, towards that. And like I said, I do remember being poor, but I it's hard to have this conversation without having a conversation about race. And
Hmm.
I say that because I grew up as a white kid and I was I had adjectives before that, effing white
Hmm.
boy. But I didn't know. I thought I was a minority actually growing up.
Is that because you are on a reservation?
Exactly.
I guess that's one question. I guess I'm not looking at the elephant in the room, but how did you end up on a
Mm.
reservation?
So my father had moved, uh, and my mother, they had gotten married, and I wish I could say it was like a good type of laundering business, but a legitimate laundering business. They had it, received from my grandfather and my maternal side, my mother's, uh, father, and he did a lot of sewing machines and thread and laundry businesses, and so as the kids would grow up, he'd help them establish one of these, but they'd have to move in different cities, and so my parents had moved to Klamath Falls because my aunt had moved there and she had started a fabric business. And so they had gone to kind of match it with laundry and um, sewing. And so they did it, but I guess they weren't very good. And I was not born yet. So I'm, of course, just telling stories. I've heard it, but they weren't very good at it. And so my father had tried to make ends meet and learned he became a construction worker. And so he was, helping build houses. And that became a trait he had learned during hard times. And because they were doing so well and he was doing so bad at the sewing store, they ended up shutting it down and they were building. And so when they were trying to put up a house for themselves, they went to find the cheapest property, and the farthest out you can get to the, reservation. So that's where they got the cheapest piece of property, and they built that first house we were in, and then while he was living, there, I was born a year after they finished the house, and then just after that, someone convinced him to run as the justice of the peace for that area. It's like a non-attorney. They usually do like traffic tickets and things like that. And he got elected to he was the local justice of the peace. And it's kind of a small operation there in the town. That's for the county. But that sealed us deep in the reservation at that point. And so, yeah, that's how they got there and why we, stayed for a long time. But there weren't too many. I mean, mostly it's native
Hmm.
and, large families and there was, I mean, as much as I say is, I mean, you definitely had to fight. Fighting was just part of the culture. So I grew up definitely being in lots of fights. But I think kids do, maybe not as much now, but I think kids do all over the place. But I do remember feeling when, I went to the big city, the Klamath Falls next to it, which was more of a white farming community, that it was such a contrast. I was like, this is interesting. And when I can remember kind of going there. So to learn that, I was a majority was a bit of an eye opener. But the reason I say it does come into race is not so much I'm not trying to, say, oh, it's poor me, I was a minority, by any means.
No,
Really, if
no.
you break
Mm-hmm.
down a lot of the data that comes across in this country, and that what is known as the circle of poverty, and that is,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to envision being somewhere that you want to get out of that poverty. And so that poverty could be a motivator in the sense that it's fear. I don't want that, but you do need kind of an example. And I think we didn't have that. Like, I had my father who didn't drink. He was trying to be ambitious, so it's hard for me not to say that that is my role model. But on the reservation, I mean, fathers were definitely missing. There were a lot
Mm-hmm.
of grandparents that raised kids. Alcohol is something that is just rampant, and it's tough. And so, just seeing from that perspective, I don't think there were a lot of, you know, mentors or a lot of examples to say, "Hey, this person has been here, made it, and done it." And there weren't any, I mean, I do think my father was a leg up for me, and even for the community at large, just to say he didn't. I mean, it was really what set him apart is he didn't drink.
Mm-hmm.
That's how low of a bar it was. But that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge bar because, my parents are still married, and, still alive, and I think they're 70, late 70s now. And so, that those kind of stories, aren't there. So that was our objective. But I think you go into lots of communities, and I've done lots of, houses. I've now worked in lots of communities doing things. I served a mission in Australia for a while and went around and lived with the Aboriginals for a while. And you definitely get a sense that you want to see somebody who has had your plight and made it. And this definitely can be even in race.
Mm-hmm.
You can see something. I think Barack Obama set a precedent for so many young kids to say, actually, I can get there. I see myself being there. I think you do have to envision yourself being somewhere. And it's why it's important twofold. I say this because as a venture capitalist, I didn't realize, my own bias. And I did this when I was in the Kauffman Fellows, which is a group of, venture capitalists along the country. They asked everybody, it's like, "Oh, okay, well, how diverse are you? Da, da, da." And I being, I'm like, listen, I grew up, on a reservation.
Mm-hmm.
I mentally tell myself, I don't see, color. Everybody's green. I mean, I don't care. And that was
Yes.
my
Mm-hmm.
response. And I thought that was a truly unprejudiced comment. I see green. And, what it means to me was, if anybody, woman, man, any race, if they have a good idea, I'm supporting that. I'm just in it for the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was challenged, and she said, "Okay, well, if you are just green, I want you to spend the next 3 months tracking data of who and what meetings you do." And not thinking about it. So I did. We put all that together, and later I was shocked to find out 98% of my meetings were white males. And it really was a shock to me that says, wow, that is my bias. It's what people saw in me, not so much what I saw in them.
Mm-hmm.
And being a venture capitalist, they're reaching out to me because they see me as someone who might fund their business. And so it's not so much about those who see me, it's about those who didn't see me as someone who would invest in their business. And so that was a
Mm-hmm.
bit of an eye opener for me to say, wow, I really have to go out and look under the rocks. I need to be proactively going into communities. I need to be proactively finding all these groups. Like, that was just, a really big thing to find those entrepreneurs who are who are looking for opportunities like I was, but aren't, maybe don't have a father who is not drinking and that's some leg up, whatever. but
Hmm.
they're great entrepreneurs. They're really ambitious. They have something. And so if we're not proactively looking in for these places, we're really missing opportunity because, I mean, coming from my own standpoint, I didn't know what college was. I knew I wanted an education. I knew I wanted something. It was very hard to go after and get, but I didn't really know what it was. I didn't know you had to take like an SAT. I didn't know like how important it was
Uh-huh.
to even get into college. Now I kind of skipped that part, but then to learn about graduate school, there's all these tests for graduate school. I didn't know those exist. The GRE, the MCAT, like what are these? And there's just basic things. And then you find out like where you go to college matters even more than your degree. And you're like, what? And so it's, Mark Twain said, never let, school get in the way of your education. You find
Mhm.
out that's true. There's an education, but there's this entire political thing of schooling. Just to land in Harvard alone, Harvard, Stanford, Booth, Wharton, these as a business school will set you miles ahead of anyone else. And so you'll have a $1 million signing bonus if you go to one of these schools where, one of the lower bottom 20 schools, it's an entirely different world. And so, and I just give that as an example that there's so many things that hungry entrepreneurs that have ambitions that want to do things don't have a preset example. There isn't a fold out there. And then to caveat this conversation, that's why I say you open up like this is a whole separate thing. So you have to cut half of this out, but you open it up. So I'll say it. And that is we have the silver tsunami about to happen. There's
Mhm.
already a massive wealth divide. 10% of the population controls 76% of the wealth of this country. And there's a silver tsunami, which is about $30 trillion that's going to be handed down from baby boomers. And if you go back and you now take just um, savings of the baby boomers, right? So we're there in 1970, there was three. If you look to retiree compared to workers, there were 3.7 workers to every retiree. Right now, there's 2.8. So we're missing almost a whole worker to help support with tax dollars to help support Social Security and Medicare. And then it's going to eventually get down to about 2.4 to 2.5. So we're missing almost a worker and a half to help support our seniors. And if you look at the same seniors, like, okay, well, what are their savings? If Social Security and Medicare are soon to be bankrupt, the average Social Security check is like $1,800. So it's not much to live on. Average house in this country is like $450,000. And then you break down savings. And if you go in by race and then you break down by education, you're down to around $5,000 in savings for an African American. I mean, you cannot retire in this country on that. So
That's like a month's living.
serious, exactly. Not even a month in
About
some places. Yeah,
yes,
it's
well,
crazy.
yeah, I'm like in California, that's cutting it tight probably.
And the
But
average is like 250,000. So even the ones that have money, it's not much. And you think of like we're going to have to address that. It's just not going to go away. It's a real issue our country is facing, and we're we're going to have to now come to terms to say, okay, well, if you look at the top 100 wealthiest people in the world, most of it's inherited wealth. And we're gonna have to like come to this. And I'm hard because on one side I'm like, listen, if I earn this, it's double taxation. I don't want to give it to the government who's inefficient. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, uh, this is gonna arise in some massive disruption in our fabric of democracy. So with
well,
the
you
haves
bring
and the
up
have-nots.
well, you bring up so many
Well,
like
you
key
brought him up.
points
I'm
of
just
well,
addressing them,
no,
right?
but the way that you've laid it out in ways and you've weaved in your own life experience and experiencing it from a whole different perspective of being an insider outsider. And what I mean by that is that you grew up with, I would say, I have some friends that are Native American, and I've been on a reservation, and I was shocked and appalled. Like some of these places don't even have running water and
Well,
things, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, right? This is like the same country, and then uh, you know, um, so I understand when you were talking about, it's like a whole different world inside this place that is, the wealthiest in the
Country in the
in the
world.
world. It's amazing, like to have like I guess different worlds, but that's how it is, right? And that's the thing that's on the stage right now is that all these different worlds, and they're not necessarily coming from a reservation, but they're coming from, I guess you would say, cultural subsets and the experiences that people have dealt with over these decades are now coming and clashing together in a time that there is, as you said, like this big wave of wealth that is about to be distributed, and so. Partly, and I'm sure you see it too. I believe that's why we're having all this upheaval for the people that do know about this or saw this coming. Of course, decades before they were like, okay, well, we've got to start like preparing this, and we got to get
All
these
right.
people so it can come in. Because I believe there's always like there's an online subset of people that
All
are
right.
like, why, while the animals are fighting over there, we'll just come in, clean up, and run away.
Well, that's what trusts are, right? So the
Yes,
wealthy have been
yes.
creating trusts, and I'm guilty as well. Creating one for my kids, but that's what they're
Mhm,
doing is,
mhm,
preparing like, okay, well, how do we pass on wealth without, getting taxes, and how do we set up,
mhm.
entities that, can grow and pay lower tax. And so, yeah, they already see that. They're already working at that now.
Yeah, so that's why I keep telling people, and that's our podcast is definitely is mainly focused on. We always say focus on what matters. That everyone, while you guys are fighting for the chicken at the table, the table is actually disappearing.
Right.
The table that's holding the chicken up is going, you guys.
And my house, yeah, that has to be really fast, because that
Right.
chicken's gone fast. So
Right, right.
there's not much time
Um,
left.
yeah, so yeah, you've brought up some remarkable points that I think encompass, the absolute times that we're in, and for those people who are awake and understanding of the depth that you've just went into from a life experience, and I like that you actually have tied it into being because everybody always thinks of racial categories, the once again victimhood, poor minorities. Yes, and minorities have went through a lot, but there is something of being able to understand from, looking one way, but not anyone understanding your life experience. So from the outside, they're like, oh, typical white guy, but understanding that each person is an individual and we don't understand the story that lays beyond the layer of that outer shield of a person, and so you've explained it so beautifully in a way that I don't think many people can relate to or understand, but that it can bring them to the the door that they need to start tying the bigger picture that we are all in this together. And I know that's a cliche saying, but we really are. This is
It's
one
true.
big round mud ball.
Exactly.
So we really, really do need to start thinking about things on a much deeper level, because there are so many critical things at stake, um, and I know it's overwhelming, but as they
Well,
say,
society is going to be judged by how they treat their
yeah,
weakest, and we're about to
yes,
see, like,
how it
we're
plays out.
exactly, we're about to see seniors. How do we judge our own society? So it's about to
Yes.
happen in the next 20 years. So.
Yes, I feel like we're in a subset of the movie. What is that? The Mockingbird or whatever.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
That's yes. I was like, here we go. Buckle up. Maybe triple buckle up. Or maybe not. Maybe you want to be free so you can run. I keep thinking that. I keep like going back and forth. Buckle up or run. I don't know. But yes. Anyhow, I just have one last question and then we'll wrap it up. I guess if you were going to look at your This is kind of like an introspective, but I guess a hope statement. I guess what would you say is your biggest goal currently that you would love to achieve in life, from an interest, personal perspective, and then also maybe, I don't know, maybe have something wild you want to like, move to Bali or something. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a big one. I mean, there are definitely big life ambitions, but I'd say I'd rather introduce Loca a little bit and say that is really the heart of my most recent goal. So that's the one I hope
Hmm.
to accomplish really in the next 5 years, and that is if you were to take like the city of Austin, there's 200 multinational corporations, but in that same area geography, there's 38,000 local small businesses. And those 200, if I were to ask any random person, like, name 10 companies right now, none of them would be local businesses because local businesses don't have these huge billion-dollar budgets, and they don't have thousands of locations to try to get our attention. So they just got the one shop. And so it's really competing with each other to try to get our attention. So Loca is trying to fix that. It's trying to give power back to the small local businesses. All marketing advertising used to be local. But now we've gone to this digital age, and technology has brought the, world closer together, but it's made the world that's actually around us farther away. And that's unfortunate because all these local business, I mean, 99.9% of all businesses in the United States are small businesses. 99.9. It's crazy. They employ close to between 45 and 50% of everyone. And so it's a powerhouse. The small business is the route to becoming an entrepreneur. It's the first step to being able, I can create something. And unfortunately, it's being attacked. It's being attacked by, and we, even though we want to support them, no one does. It becomes very hard. So what Loca is trying to do is be a single app, and it's going to bring all local businesses on one app. And instead of having points, it's all cash rewards. So you can get paid to go around and visit local businesses, earn cash, and then you can create content for them. And so if you go into the business, you can take a picture of your food, you can take a picture of, the business around and share it, and you can get paid per view. It's really saying, let's skip the big boy companies that are doing all the marketing and let the customers do the marketing and make it all local. And so by keeping our advertising dollars local and giving it to customers, customers find lower prices, earn cash rewards, and it really allows these local businesses to show off what they're great at. And that is being authentic. And being authentic means I like sitting at a place where my chairs do not match. They wobble, the table wobbles, and all of our coffee mugs are half broken and glued back together and different. That's unique. And it used to be, the place. But if you drive around now, breakfast joints are gone. They're almost all fully extinct. They're just gone. And others are being attacked constantly by that same thing. So to keep those local businesses alive, we've got to support them. But if you survey people, they say the reason they don't support local businesses, they don't know what to expect, they don't know where to find them, and they think they're expensive. And so Loca's trying to fix that problem. And that's really what my main, thriving goal is if it's one thing to come out and say, oh, support local business. But that doesn't work. It's never going to work if it's just charity. If someone is doing it just because, it's what economists call the warm glow. If they're just doing it for that fun sensation, it'll never get done. And so you do have to build in an actual economic model. And we're working on trying to make that economic model where it's say, hey, stop paying average small businesses paying, Google and Facebook and Amazon $1,500 in total a month to do all this marketing that, for Instagram boosts, and it doesn't really, account to much. They have no way of showing if it works. And Loca now has a way to show that it works. You are able to connect directly with your local customers. and give them something, and they're happy because now they are earning cash, which is lowering their prices to support local businesses. And so that's really my most recent ambition, is to try to bring that not just to this country, but around the world. I think it's going to be a great app as you travel. You'll be able to find lots of things to do in lots of different communities. And, it's going to be exclusive to just those local small businesses, and a great way for them no longer to have a PhD in marketing to try to reach local customers. They can easily, let it run itself, and, still be able to connect. And you as a customer now have a way to connect to a small business without having this whole anxiety that seems to be, troubling this new generation. They can easily interface with it just from their phone, and, help really grow those small business. So that's what I'd say. That's what I see. I really want to grow that. That has become my new passion, ambition, is to really help, thriving young entrepreneurs trying to, get out of their community.
Yeah, and I think that is a perfect tie with our whole discussion, because it goes back to the root and heart of what I was saying. If I had to label, your journey is about community. And so,
Right.
coming
Yeah. I
to
like it.
Loca, and then not only, you went from, I guess, helping from I guess you would say a ripple effect, right? Helping your family, to your small community, to the wider state, to the country, and now globally. And not only that, bringing what you saw as your life experience with your family. As you mentioned, you have multiple siblings that are entrepreneurs, so you understand all different types of businesses and difficulties and perspectives, and bringing that together now in an application that helps people around the world, and not get bogged down by the red tape. That's astounding. I don't know if you probably saw that coming. And so yeah, so I think it was wonderful to go through your journey and understand why you have now created Loca, and what brought you to all of this understanding of community for your own experiences, and also understanding what's going on out here in this crazy world.
Well, it sounds so much nicer when you say it. So
Well, thank you, Joe, for your time and insight.
my
To learn
pleasure.
more about Loca and Joe Edgar, go to loca.us. If you have a passion for an unserved community, a social justice problem, or want to change minds, contact Project Good Work at projectgood.work to start your project of change today. Subscribe to our mailing list at projectgood.work/subscribe to get our episodes and blog articles sent to you each month. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Project Good, where we're focused on what matters.